Hello, everybody, and welcome in. We are so thrilled that you're here today to hear an awesome presentation. At this point, just going to let everybody filter in for a few minutes. So take 2 or 3 minutes to grab some water, coffee, whatever you need to do, and we will be back in about 2 minutes when everybody has filtered in. Just going to give everybody 1 more minute to filter in and then we will get started. Thanks for your patience. All right, looks like we are ready to start. Thank you again for coming on to our webinar this morning. We are so excited that you're here. We have an amazing presentation for you on cloud security. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Madison. Welcome everybody to today's weekly demonstration. Today's session is going to be focused on cloud security with WAF for Azure and AWS, Amazon Web Services. So quick agenda here. I'm going to start off here by introducing myself, kind of define what WAF is in the context of security control validation, why we should be testing in WAF environments, and how to test it, right? After I kind of go over that, we'll jump into the platform to give you a quick demonstration of some readily available attack scenarios that involve WAF, and then I will point out some useful resources for you to get started on that. So my name is Chris Carrion. I'm a solutions engineer here at AttackIQ. I've been with AttackIQ for about 8 months now, and my focus is on the pre-sale side, working with prospects and clients to make sure we align our technology to their needs. If you ever want to contact me, please feel free to do so. My email is right there, and you can also reach out to me via LinkedIn. So let's define what WAF is. WAF is essentially an acronym for Web Application Firewalls. It works just like more or less the regular network firewall, but there's some differences here. Essentially what it does, a WAF, a Web Application Firewall, protects web applications, and some do APIs as well. And they do this by using rules that essentially filter out traffic patterns such as exploits that may involve, cross-site scripting, SQL injection type of attacks, and even things like server-side requests and forgery. That is not a complete list, but these are targeting vulnerabilities in web applications. A lot of web applications leverage commonly used technologies and frameworks, whether that be PHP, Java, or other technologies that may contain vulnerabilities or have vulnerabilities introduced in those applications that adversaries are able to exploit. So a lot of this WAF technology that we talked about is sometimes natively supported by cloud vendors, and this is true for AWS as well as Azure and GCP, Google Cloud. But also there's some external vendors that are able to be integrated into your existing cloud environments, right? So there's a lot of vendors out there that offer this service to be able to protect against attacks targeting web applications. Also like to touch on the fact that WAF falls under the customer's responsibility in the share responsibility models. Both Microsoft Azure and AWS have these types of frameworks where the responsibility is divided. Usually the cloud provider focuses on the infrastructure side, the physical aspects of the data centers that customers use as part of their cloud approaches. But the customer side of it deals with securing the data itself, making sure the applications are up to date, free of vulnerabilities and exploits, as well as, like I said before, the networking piece, which includes the WAF, the applications, and other mechanisms within the cloud architecture. So just know that there's this concept called share responsibility models that are both embraced by the customer that should be able to protect the data itself, and the cloud provider, which kind of protects the infrastructure. And this kind of may shift left and right. There might be some instances if you're have a cloud deployment that is purely infrastructure as a service, for example, then the bulk of the responsibility will fall on the customer. If it's more of a SaaS solution, then the cloud provider usually has more of those responsibilities because they're offering not only the infrastructure but also the underlying services that are needed to operate the client's cloud-based environment. So now, why will we want to test WAF for cloud environments, right? So it's just another attack surface, right? Yet another attack surface in the list of attack surfaces that our organization must be tracking and mitigating and actively protecting. Gartner recently said that nearly all successful cloud breaches are caused by customer configuration or mistakes. Misconfigurations could deal with essentially cloud configurations, right, where we are configuring the cloud controls themselves, dealing with permissions, right? So this could be sort of a mitigating factor, if you will, for other types of resources and assets, applications that you might have in your cloud environment. As we know, this kind of presents a unique security challenge if you're migrating to the cloud or you already have a cloud infrastructure that you're operating in. The security has shifted left, right? So in terms of, for example, containers, serverless workloads, when these are being deployed, the DevOps aspect of it is very important here, because if you're deploying a control in your cloud environment, you might be introducing inadvertently certain weaknesses or vulnerabilities. Maybe things are not encrypted, or the permissions are not set properly, right? So a WAF could act as a mitigating control, even though some of these assets, resources in the cloud may not be configured properly. Although, however, I do emphasize that you shouldn't lean on WAF as a all solution. Obviously, if you're have production resources in your cloud environment, you should be able to you should be actively doing things like artifact scanning for containers, for example, making sure there's no clear passwords and those types of assets. For things like serverless workloads, that gets a little bit more vague because some of these serverless workloads deal with things like for AWS, think of AWS Lambda functions. But still, if there are weaknesses there that as a web application is kind of leveraging those, then a WAF might help in kind of mitigating those threats. It also aligns with multi-cloud strategies. A lot of organizations these days, leverage multiple cloud vendors to support their redundancy and high availability approaches. So, they might leverage AWS for certain components, or part of a redundancy strategy, and kind of leverage other cloud vendors as well in order to be able to have that that strategy of redundancy, right? So the good thing is that we can test for WAF no matter what cloud environments you have, right? So obviously the big ones are AWS and Azure, but also there's WAF providers and services for GCP and other cloud providers. And obviously, we want to test for WAF because new and critical exploits are being found all the time. I can only point to, the big ones recently, Log4j, the Atlassian Confluence application, and so on and so forth. So, it has to be a large part of your control validation for your cloud deployments. So now the question is, how do we test, right? Here at AttackIQ, we fully embrace a threat-informed defense approach. This approach really is different from things like, hey, just vulnerability scanning, chasing down controls without really having any context as to who might be targeting those, those critical assets in your environment, right? So we understand that a threat-informed defense strategy involves really understanding the adversaries and the motives, usually using things like threat intelligence feeds. What are their behaviors and their craft, right? Usually these are discussed in terms of TTPs, and we're leveraging the MITRE ATT&CK framework in order to really map those techniques to the controls that you might be protecting, right? Or the controls that are supposed to be protecting your critical assets, your crown jewels, if you will. So once you understand the adversary's motives and techniques and understand the security controls that you have deployed in your production environment that are protecting your critical assets, now we can map those adversary TTPs to the controls that would mitigate any type of threat, right? So kind of depending, let's take, for example, APT29, right? They have their own methods and motives and behaviors targeting different types of assets. So, what are those controls that are protecting those assets, right? So we want to be able to map those TTPs to those controls that are supposed to be protecting them. So now, once we do that, we can validate the controls by actively testing them to make sure they're working properly. If not, essentially applying the mitigations in place so we can iterate and expand on the try to protect the attack surface as it relates to my web applications that are hosted in cloud environments. So I know this is threat-informed defense strategy. It could be an kind of more expansive discussion, but I just gonna point it out that in order to really hone in on the controls and testing those controls as it pertains to cloud environments such as WAF, you would start. I highly encourage you to look into a threat-informed defense approach here. So again, we're going to leverage the MITRE ATT&CK framework to pick out some of the TTPs that you might want to test for in your WAF cloud environments. So that's essentially what we're going to be focused on when we jump into the platform. And just a note here, as the AttackIQ platform is able to do things like atomic, anatomic, and network modalities, meaning atomic is usually individual scenarios that test a specific control or a function or a technique in order to validate that control or that technique being blocked or prevented and or detected. We also have things like anatomic testing, and that simply means we can chain these attack scenarios together in such a way that we're emulating attacker behavior, right? We're emulating the steps that an adversary would take to essentially reach their objective, which is the impact, the exfiltration of the data, the destruction of the data, and the things like that that an attacker would do to their victims. Finally, we have network modalities, which means we're able to replay network traffic that has certain profiles, right? We're able to replay malicious C2 command and control traffic to see if your boundary controls are able to detect that activity. Just kind of let you know that for today's discussions, I know it's the anatomic is highlighted. We're actually focusing on both atomic and anatomic because we're going to be talking a little bit about individual scenarios and kind of grouping those scenarios in a way that is able to cover more ground. We're able to expand on the controls that we're testing here. All right, so it's time for a demo. So what I'll do is shift us my screen share here, and we'll focus on the actual platform. So I did just log into the platform. So what you're seeing here is essentially the scenario library. So you have a couple of things here that I want to point out. First of all is the search capability and the filter capability here on the side. What we want to do essentially is just look for WAF scenarios and specific WAF scenarios, right? So I'll focus one on a big one. I'll focus on log4shell in this case. So I could either just type it in or filter by WAF controls here. So I scroll down, you see that we have different filters here, such as the tactics, the security controls, ransomware, threat intelligence, so on and so forth. So if I wanted to say, hey, I want to see the scenarios available for WAF, I could filter by WAF right here. Or if I want to do something more specific, I could just type the scenario name itself or a part of the scenario name. So in this case, I'm going to type log4shell. And so you're seeing right here are several scenarios that directly involve log4shell. So if you don't know about log4shell, is a vulnerability affecting the log4j module that is used in a lot of Java applications that leads to active compromise of those systems running those applications. So we can see there's a lot of types of scenarios here. What I'm focusing on is this one right here. And I'll kind of click on the details just to give you a better picture of what this looks like. Essentially, the scenario description is going to list exactly what the intent of the scenario is. So we're going to be very prescriptive on what it's going to do. You can see right at the top, there's some capabilities that are going to be tested: next generation firewall, network IPS IDS, network filtering, right, as well. And since I have several types of solutions here, implemented in my demo environment, I could see that I could also test microsegmentation as well as regular next generation firewalls here. If I navigate to the parameters, you could see that I have some options to customize this attack scenario. And I'll just go over here a couple of things. You could choose the protocol. It could be HTTP, HTTPS, as well as a version of this protocol. I can define the domain and the application path to test, as well as the type of request, right? Usually it would be a GET request. The attacker will send a request to the web application, and this request usually contains a payload that might be malicious. In this case, for the log4 shell, the log4 shell exploit, the actual exploit, the payload is located under the user agent field, and you can actually see the string that's going to be used as part of this attack. Further down, you can also specify other headers in the HTTP header. So if you wanted to essentially make your attack scenario more realistic, we could do things like adding, for example, supported languages, right? If you want to, for example, emulate a user agent payload that has the HTTP header of accept language, it could either be like English, French, Chinese, whatever language you want, just to give you that realistic. And it's really going to test your detection as well, right? Because based on the language, based on the source for that request, you can essentially make it even more realistic. So further down, you can obviously customize the expected response codes. Usually, if it's something that's supposed to be protected, you want a 403, right? So you can change this around as well. Right. So I'm not going to save any changes for now. So I'll go ahead and click OK. Another example of a WAF type scenario that kind of deals more on the application itself, as far as kind of like the server side, right? So it's more server focused, would be a kind of injection, code injection attack, right? So for example, I can also engage the search filter if I'm running an application, for example, that's running a PHP. I can simply just type that in and get the associated attack scenarios. So what I'll do in this case is I'll actually filter the WAF and I'll add PHP to get more specific here. Again, so what you're seeing here are some of the filter results that involve WAF, testing WAF, and specifically PHP, right? So in this case, we're going to go ahead and kind of walk you through what this WAF test for PHP code injection. So I'm going to click the details here, and the only thing I'll point out here, everything else is pretty much the same on the parameter side, right? So these are the good thing is that these are cloud independent, meaning if you have an application in Azure or GCP or AWS, really we're testing the application itself. We're not testing the cloud configuration per se, right? However, like I said before, a lot of these cloud providers do provide native WAF capabilities, so you can bring in those applications, or you can essentially incorporate an external WAF vendor or provider, right? But either whatever the case may be here in your situation, we can engage these types of scenarios that are going to test the applications themselves. So it's really transparent of what cloud provider you're using at this point. Again, we present you here with a few settings here that you have the URI, for example, and the application path. You can specify if this needs to be verifying the SSL certificates, and if it doesn't verify the SSL certificates in this example, we can say, hey, it didn't pass the SSL certificate, therefore we're dropping the request and we're protecting against these types of attacks. right? So the query string in the GET request, this is actually the string that executes that exploit. And you can also add additional and customize the headers. In this case, the user agent is a normal user agent, but again, like I said before, you can add additional header value pairs, such as the supported languages or any other under the HTTP header that you can use to really customize and make it more realistic to your needs. All right. So again, I'm going to close this and really, I just kind of showed you two attack scenarios. Another one that I like to show you is, why don't we do something along the lines of server-side request forgeries, right? Now, these are can be specific to the cloud environments, right? So if we're focusing for AWS, for example, EC2 computes, right? There's also, WAF scenarios that we can engage that specifically target the technologies of these cloud providers. So in this case, we can just simply add the name of the exploit. You could either say server-side request forgery or in short SSRF. So we'll go ahead and add that. And you can see here, again, we have various attack scenarios. They're gonna test different aspects of SSRF or server-side request forgeries. And the one that we're looking for is essentially the one that's gonna look for metadata, right? So let me see if I can scroll down here and find the one that I want. Yeah, so this one right here at the bottom, right, we're looking for to see if we're able to execute this scenario that's going to reveal, metadata and credential data that an adversary might use to further exploit once he is inside your cloud environment, right? So again, I'm going to click details and kind of navigate to the parameters here to show you what that looks like. Usually in these cases, the payload, the web application would be an EC2, would be an EC2 asset here. So in cases like this, you just type the address of the URI of that asset, and usually it would be something like this. We got the HTTP, EC2, and then the internal IP address, right, or the public-facing IP address of this resource here for you, which is again is an EC2 compute asset. Again, we allow you to have the the customizability here, which you can use to really make these scenarios your own and really start thinking about that threat-informed defense approach here. Can't cancel out of that. So yeah, at this point, the only thing that I wanted to discuss here is we can create an assessment based on any of these three scenarios that I just presented, or we can create an assessment that has all those three attack scenarios, right? It's very easy to do, and what I'll do is just demonstrate how that's done. It is done under the assessments menu. So what I'll do is click this top left icon, navigate to assessments, and then click this button, which is create new assessment. Now we have the capability of creating assessments from scratch. So in this case, I will create a custom assessment. And I'll talk a little bit about what the templates that we have available here next. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and click custom. The next step here is just add the scenarios that I talked about, right? And the first step will be to click this this add icon, this plus icon. So I'll go ahead and do that. Click add scenarios. And we can do the filtering or the search as we did in the beginning, right? So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and click security controls, click on WAF, and then type log4shell. Go ahead and select that in the checkbox here, add scenarios. If you wanted to add some more, you can simply do that. Again, we'll go ahead and at the security controls, click on WAF to filter those types of scenarios, and then type PHP. Oh, apologies. Yeah, so this one's the one I was, if you, and I forgot to mention, if you wanted to add multiple at the same time, you can. You don't have to click this button, but since we have this one selected already, we could just move on and say EC2. And since we're testing for credentials, I'll add extra string here on the search criteria to indicate that, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select this one as well. So now we have 2 scenarios to add, so I'll go ahead and add that. So go ahead and click done. You'll notice that the status here is indicating not ready, and that's just indicating that we need to add the target and the application path and the expected response, right? We can do this, we can configure this, all of this at the same time. I mean, you can go and configure these individually, right? So if you click configure, you can add the information that is needed to for this attack scenario. Or what we could do is essentially do a macro configuration here. If I scroll down, we could see that we have additional properties that we can configure. And so these 2 configurations that I was talking about is, okay, we are able to create a new web app path and a WAF response, right? I'm expecting a 403 in my case, meaning that the connection was dropped, made unavailable to the source. And then the web application that I want to target, right? In this case, I can create one, but I already have one here. So, as an example, I have a business intelligence portal that I'm using. Has already the web application URL and the path. So I'll go ahead and click that. Click apply. And then go ahead and specify my WAF response codes, again, which is a 403 in this case. And that can be customizable to whatever response codes that you want. So once I select that, I click apply. And you'll notice that it made a change here. So let's see what's going on here. I'll give it a minute here. Yeah, so it's saying it's not ready. So what we do is just go ahead and click configure. It did not specify the path here, but I can add that as well. All right, so I went ahead and added the customized information here. Go ahead and click apply. Oh, so now you see it turned to ready in this case. So go ahead and click done. After that, you're pretty much set, right? All I have to do is click continue and then run that. So we just talked about 3 unique individual scenarios that deal with web application firewalls to test those. But I also want to talk a little bit about other options that you might have available, right? So I talked about the fact that you can create a asset from scratch, but we also have templates that you can leverage in the platform. So these are predefined WAF assessments for different cloud vendors. So we have coverage for AWS, Azure, right? It's very easy to engage those as well. So what I'll do is just click on the menu again, click assessments as we were before. And instead of creating a new assessment that is customized, I could just simply choose a template. So what this will do is, it'll take you to the assessment template library. And from here, you could either search again for a specific vendor, for example, or you could filter for the specific controls that you want to test. So I'll do that right now. I'll click the filter icon here. And under category, I'm going to go ahead and navigate to where it says web application firewall. Click apply, and that's going to filter all the available predefined assessments that we have for WAF checks, right? So you can see here we have 3 available. One of them is for Azure specific. The other one is for AWS. But we also have assessments that align with the OWASP top 10 health checks, right? You can see it's a lot more. All of these are a lot more involved in the amount of scenarios and the different types of tests that we're conducting. So this will be, the iteration and improvement aspect of what I talked about earlier is, in the context of threat-informed defense, we can start off, crawling, and then walking, and then running. So this will be, something more advanced that you can utilize when you're testing some of these web applications that you have deployed in your production environment and on the cloud. So just to kind of show you here real quick, I'm going to go ahead and click on the details and kind of show you the types of tests that's going to be conducted as part of this WAF assessment. So anywhere from admin protection, standard rule sets as implemented by AWS, because AWS does provide you with kind of a baseline protection when you engage their WAF solution, but other kind of more focused tests as well, right? So again, you can create the assessment very easy. Just go ahead and click New Assessment. And after that, the same concept applies, right? You'll notice that none of these are ready, but once I go ahead and apply the macro configurations for the protected web app that I want to try to target, as well as the expected response codes, I should be able to test this right away. So you notice all of these have turned to ready. I will kind of also point out that you're able to test these from externally using our AttackIQ hosted agent, right? So as part of our solution, you can test internally with internal agents that you deployed and install, or you have the option to use our externally hosted agent to kind of, again, give you more realism when you're doing these types of tests. I'll go ahead and click continue. And just as it did before, you can click run once everything is configured, and that'll actually test all the techniques and scenarios that you saw earlier. All right, so let's kind of move back to our Microsoft PowerPoint slide and kind of want to walk you through some resources that are available to you if you're interested in exploring this testing capability for AttackIQ. First of all, I'd like to kind of point you to our AttackIQ Academy, right? We have various courses that might be of interest to you. If you are, starting on this path, you want to test your security stack in a cloud environment. So we have things like, mapping to AWS, kind of focusing more on threat-informed architecture, right? As well as, mapping MITRE ATT&CK security stacks to Azure, right? So we have over 35,000 registered defenders and over 21,000 certificates have been awarded for our courses that we offer for free. And I think this might be a little bit outdated, but just kind of shows you we're supporting the community here with practice, right? Generation and skill sets that are needed in order to defend against threats that involve web applications and deploy in cloud environments. Also want to point you to our research that we've done with the MITRE Center for Threat-Informed Defense. We work directly with the MITRE organization to really kind of develop new techniques, new ways of protecting cloud environments. And I kind of highlighted here at the top some of the projects that we have worked with them in the past that essentially map the techniques to the different controls in the cloud that you could use to test right away. So, please do check out some of the security stack mappings for different cloud providers that are available here for you. Finally, I do like to point out that we have a free trial of AttackIQ that you can easily deploy, and we have web application firewall assessments that you can also test, right? So simply go to attackiq.com /free trial, free-trial, so you can get started on that. With that being said, that kind of concludes my weekly demo. Madison, over back to you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you so much, everybody, for joining. If you have any follow-up questions, you can always reach out to Chris, like he said at the beginning of the presentation, or AttackIQ in general. Thank you so much again for joining today, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.